The biggest thing that was the most shameful, and I dealt with being in prison mentally. The worst place to be in prison is not physically. I would have rather went to prison and be locked up than be locked up mentally in my brain from that trauma. So for me, with regards to human trafficking, I was in prison in my mind because I held on to a secret. And that secret was being trafficked. And with my trafficking, it was a sex trafficking typology. I was involved in a sex trade. My trafficker was a pastor. You wouldn't say to me, "Hey, Teresa, are you a victim of human trafficking?" No, I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I've heard in T.D. Jakes, Pastor T.D. Jakes has said before, you look at wilderness, will, right? So it was in God's will that carried me to that wilderness for a reason, for God's purpose. But he saved me, not knowing how many buyers I serviced, because I was wounded, because my trafficker, like I said, a pastor. So that was a man of the cloth. So then I started questioning, what God? Why would you allow this to happen to me? I've always helped people, but you say you're God and you're loving. So if you're loving and everything, then why did you allow this to happen to me? You don't love me?
Hey, I'm Reverend Jocelyn, a minister of healing, speaker, and women's ministry coach. I grew my ministry from a simple blog to a national Christian trauma healing movement. And now I help women to answer their call to build purpose-driven ministries and businesses. Welcome to Reverend Jocelyn Talks, where healing meets purpose. Hello, my good people in ministry out there. It's your sister, Reverend Jocelyn, and thank you for hanging out with me today. I am blessed to be here with an amazing woman of God who, when I heard her speak for the first time, I'm like, who is this woman? Why is she so dynamic? And she does so from a place of standing on her story and using it as a mission to help other people to heal, to reclaim their life, reclaim their story. And she's doing such great work in the world. So it is an honor to have Dr. Teresa Merriweather on the show with us today. Now, her bio is long, so I'm just going to give you like the cliff notes of her background. But she's a survivor of sex trafficking. She's a co-author of Rethinking Primary Prevention of Child Trafficking. She's on so many boards. The list is so long, I'm not going to even like read off the list. But the thing that I appreciate about her, I said this in my pre-conversation with her, she's a champion. Like, she's a warrior when it comes to this cause of fighting against human trafficking. And so she's going to share her powerful story with us today and how she is now turning her pain into purpose. And so thank you, Dr. Teresa, for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's really a blessing because when I heard you speak several months back, you shared your story from a place of you're not carrying the shame. Like, and it was something in which you were inspiring people through one of the most difficult moments, I would guess, of your life. And so if you could share a little bit about your story of surviving human trafficking.
Okay. So again, thanks for having me, Reverend. For me with human trafficking, the biggest thing that was the most shameful, and I dealt with being in prison mentally. The worst place to be in prison is not physically. I would have rather went to prison and be locked up than be locked up mentally in my brain, right? From that trauma. And that even though imagine people that are in prison right now that are locked up from the trauma in itself, in the brain and physically. So I think about the other survivors of human trafficking where they were they're wrongfully convicted because they didn't have the legal resource, all the resources and things legally to be able to have representation in a courtroom to recognize that I'm a victim of human trafficking. I did not commit these offenses, just willingly and because I have a drug problem and all this. I committed them under duress in a life of trafficking. And sometimes your trafficker forces you to commit the offenses, right? So, and then you go to prison. I mean, you go to jail, and then they're sitting right there. They're the ones that's going to bond you out, sitting in the waiting room, waiting for you when you get out. Did you get enough? Okay, now back to work. So for me, with regards to human trafficking, I was in prison in my mind because I held on to a secret. And that secret was being trafficked. And with my trafficking, it was a sex trafficking typology. Okay. So with human trafficking, there's different typologies. In mine, you wouldn't say to me, "Hey, Teresa, are you a victim of human trafficking?" No, I'm a survivor of human trafficking. And I'm not even a survivor. I'm a survivor, or what you would call a survivor leader, And so for me, you would ask, well, what was your typology? My typology was sex trafficking. I was involved in a sex trade. My trafficker was a pastor. So I met him at a church where he was on the ministerial board and stuff, and so when the main pastor and her husband were unable to preach, he would preach. So he was overseeing her flock, right? A pastor, and then I'm relocated. And he also had money. He was in a high executive, management position within a company, corporate company, So he talked me into relocating to another state, which was Kentucky, because I'm from Ohio. So I transited with him there because he said that he had to, that his company was taking on, more contracts, and they needed his help out there. He wanted to relocate, get away, from his ex-wife and stuff like that, place where he once, was married, and so anyway, I relocated with him, and that was the wrong thing to do, because one of the biggest things is you don't cohabitate before marriage, especially not no pastor, following the Christianity, this faith-based walk with God. So, that was an indicator, but I chose to ignore it. All right. And so with me, after my trafficking ordeal, um, I didn't even want to self-identify with being a victim of human trafficking. I don't want to self-identify. I got God. I can't believe this happened to me, you know? And so, like I tell people, bad things happen to good people, you know? And I remember very, very clearly when we used to go to Bible study before I relocated to Kentucky. We were at Bible study. And that's how I met him too. So I started attending church services. And I remember one of the other pastors saying, we were talking, and he said, and he was talking about how in John, where he says, to test the spirit by the spirit, so you know if it's from God or not. There's many false prophets that have gone out into the world that's professing, in Jesus' name. And I remember that pastor looking at me in my face, and I'm like, But now I look back, because we look back over our lives, right? Right then, I was like God was speaking to me through him, but I didn't catch it right there, the discernment, you know? And so I know, like, it's like God now, I went out into the wilderness with this man, looking at the trafficking ordeal. But I've heard in Pastor T.D. Jakes has said before, well, when you look at wilderness, will, right? So it was in God's will that carried me to that wilderness for a reason, for God's purpose. But he saved me. He saved me. And that was like what Paul talks about, that thorn in his side. I got a thorn in my side too. And it's being trafficked. I wake up with it every day. That thorn. Not knowing how many buyers I serviced. Or you use the word John. John and buyers interchangeable. So, it was a pretty horrible and shameful ordeal. And like I said, I was in prison in mind, because I held on to that secret. But my psychiatric team said, Teresa, you're only as sick as your secret. But I did not want to take that Band-Aid on, right? Because I was wounded. But when you get a wound, you get cut and you're bleeding out, there's someone that's gonna come along that's gonna help you to bandage that wound, right? To suture that wound. I think about the Good Samaritan. When that just made me think Good Samaritan. Suture that wound up, right? But then there comes a time, you put a Band-Aid on, there comes a time when you have to take it off, right? To let the sun naturally hear. When I say sun, S-O-N, Jesus, right? So I think of. So for me, it was allowing myself to now take off that Band-Aid. And when taking off that Band-Aid is exposing my wound as I ascend. That wound I didn't want to expose, because dealing with the shame as people I hate myself. I'm ashamed. I let this happen to me. Teresa, you're so smart. Because remember, I was educated before I was trafficked. You're so smart, you're stupid. But remember, in the word, he tells us that Jesus, he grew in stature and he grew in wisdom, right?
Mhm.
There's some people that grow, right? But they grow physically, but they don't mature mentally, right? So I
Yeah.
grew physically, but there was some vulnerability. I was stagnant from childhood trauma, to where I didn't grow mature, right? Maturity. But Jesus has now filled that void and that vulnerability, right? And so with it, I came out of that shame and that guilt, because I was the worst person to deal with, because it was my own self looking in that mirror, hating myself, waking up every day with that thorn in my side. But also when I look in the mirror at myself, I don't like me and I don't love me.
Now, Dr. Teresa, let me ask you, because this is real. Like, I know some people might not have experienced human trafficking, but they have possibly experienced shame for something else. Shame
Hmm.
of something where they felt like, I'm so stupid. How did I let this happen? Like being afraid to let other people even know about their story. You talked about the secrets. You're only as sick as your secrets, right? So I know people could be resonating. with this. So my question for you is, how did you transition from holding all this shame around your story to getting to a place where you're like, "No, I'm gonna stand on my story, and I'm gonna share my story because other people need to hear my story so that other people can experience freedom." What was this transition like for you?
The transition was very difficult. It was getting to know God for real, getting to know him for myself, right? Read that word and study for yourself. Because my trafficker, like I said, a pastor. So that was a man of the cloth. So then I started questioning, what God? Why would you allow this to happen to me? I've always helped people. But you say you're God and you're loving. So if you're loving and everything, then why did you allow this to happen to me? You don't love me? Because I right now don't love you. Those are my
That's
feelings for
real.
God. It's real, right?
Mhm.
The transform is, like I tell people, as I get prepared to open my safe houses for survivors of human trafficking, to the victims, once you get out the life, you're a survivor, to be able to come through. I can't heal you, but I can put you in the position of the great I am who can, right? And that great position is just so happen your social worker is a Christian, your therapist is a Christian, right? And keeping moving forward with that. So God allowed me to meet a therapist, a biblical therapist. She's a biblical counselor, right? A therapist, but she also was my friend. She was at that church and she saw the signs, but I didn't listen, right? And you know how it's let me mind my own business. She's gonna see for herself, and hopefully God, he will protect her. Because I wouldn't have listened. I would have stopped being friends with her. That's just like a lot of people. Should I tell him that? Should I tell her that her boyfriend is cheating on her, her husband cheating on her? She's gonna turn on me. Same type of situation, right? So, um, like when I got back after being trafficked, she didn't say anything. She offered me a warm place to stay. Way later on, because I went to Georgia first. Then I was traveled somewhere else, but then God said, you got to come through me and you got for this healing. And I got the perfect person. And so she offered me a place to lay my head to sleep with a warm bed, food. She clothed me. And every night she made sure that I had on the table beside my bed, it was the Life Recovery Bible when I was ready. She already knew what had happened to me because she worked with children that had been trafficked. And she already knew, but waiting on me. And waiting on me was me getting out the way, right? And allowing myself to be vulnerable. And being vulnerable that, hey, she has doctorate in front of her name. She was, before I was doctor, she's doctorate. And I worked in mental health before too. So there's go some more shame. I could help other people. How come I didn't help myself?
Real.
I was substance abuse. I'm substance abuse mental illness certified. SAMI, working with people with dual diagnosis with the mental illness and the drug abuse, was been a top case manager before.
But let me speak to that, Dr. Teresa, because I think what you're bringing forward is a lot of times we can think that these titles, the educations, the certification, all the different things can cause you to be exempt from experience these elements of life, whether it's human trafficking, domestic violence, any other forms of trauma.
Mhm.
And the titles, it can happen to anybody, is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And so I'm going to move forward a little bit, but yes, you're right. It can happen to anyone, you know? And so with it, that Life Recovery Bible helped me, and then working with people who, has the mental illness with or without substance abuse disorders I worked with. But how would I find myself addicted to drugs? Not me, you know? It's just like with the word, when we go and we read it, but then when it's time to apply it, there goes the test, you know? Here I am, I know it, textbook, I work with the clients, but oh, look at me. There was some vulnerability, how it got me. And then right there, the manipulation, and then it started drugging you. Before you know, you got the addiction. And that was one of the things, like, how could people who knew, how can I come out and tell this? I'm ashamed. What are my old clients are going to find out? I come out, I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and I help them. Well, how come you didn't help yourself? You know, but we all have a journey, right? And this journey is called life. And none of us are experts in this journey called life. We all come together to go ahead and help each other come together collectively with tools to make it through, right? This life. And so with me, just so happened with my life, my biggest tragedy was being trafficked. And so with it, I had to learn, and God allowed me through with my biblical therapist to learn that I had a purpose before the world had an opinion of me, and really understand what it means, that Bible and what that word says, right? Because I mean, in the beginning was the word, right? And the word was with God, and the word was God, correct? So to get to really understand what it means when he says in Jeremiah 19:11, he said, he knew me, right? Before he formed me in my mother's womb. He knew the plans that he had for me. And the plans that he had for me was not to hurt or harm me, but to give me a life of prosperity and an expected end. So for me, getting rid of the T, right? Little T, and putting the big G, the Teresa. Let him. He did it. And none of us volunteer for this thing called life and what tragedies or things we're going to go through, the trials, because he said we're going to have the trials here and the tribulations. But I didn't know mine was going to be human trafficking. And let me say this, Reverend, that he doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies those who he calls. So just so happened I was called to human trafficking, but he had to put me through it. Now let's see how it felt, Teresa. Let me put you. It's just like when I look back. Let's look back over my life. When we look at my biography, it's extensive, but let's look at the core piece being that I hold a bachelor's in sociology with a minor in criminology. When we look at sociology being that we're studying people and groups, their behavior, sociology, right? Then we look at criminology, study of criminals, human trafficking. A lot of times it's organized crime. These are criminals. Human trafficking is one of the most heinous crimes there is, right? Then I have the masters in the administration of justice and security, right? So when we look at justice, this was injustice, human trafficking. We look at security. I'm able to keep myself safe and those who I extract from the life of human trafficking safe, right? Then we look at my CSI, my crime scene technician certification. I'm able to help advocate for that victim and help the prosecutors get the conviction to send the trafficker or traffickers away. And or on the other side, to help the criminal defense attorney defend that victim and say, hey, this isn't a person who committed this offense, because they wanted to, they just criminal behavior. This is a victim of human trafficking who committed the crime under duress in the life of being trafficked.
So what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Teresa, is that all of this education, all of this experience, everything is connected. Hi, it's Reverend Jocelyn, and it is time to accelerate your ministry. I have had the pleasure of working with thousands of women across the country to help them to answer the call. And oftentimes when they first come to me, they're struggling with things like, how do I have clarity about my next steps? Or how do I generate revenue for my ministry? Or how do I market my ministry? These are common struggles. But this is what I've learned. You don't have to struggle alone. Support is available for you. And if you are at a place where you are serious about taking your next step as it relates to your ministry and you want to see results, I want to invite you to book a free Ministry and Business Accelerator call with me. A time where we'll talk about your challenges, we'll talk about your goals, and we'll talk about a path forward for you to get the support that you need. Now, spots are limited, so you want to act fast. But I am here to support you in taking that next step in your ministry journey. So let's accelerate your ministry together. Book your call today.
Yes. So, welcome back, everyone. Let me say that. So, I want to say with my education, right? Because remember, I was educated before I was trafficked. So I said to recap that, he doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies those who he calls, right? So therefore, you look at my education. When we look at law enforcement, right? Because I also was a former probation and parole officer. But think about this: how humiliated, mad, and ashamed I was at it myself, right? Like he couldn't whoop me physically, right? But it's the mental. And in mental, when we look at the clinical side, we think about with clinical terms, get to know for yourself what it means when it comes to a trauma bond, right? And then you hear Stockholm syndrome, all right? Those terms, get to know that for yourself, right? So with it, he couldn't do all that, but then just imagine how God, with my criminal justice, when you think about undercover agents that go in for the drugs trafficking, they come in, they get close with the person, the drug dealer, the big kingpin, get close. That's your boy or your girl, whatever, but don't know that that's the actual undercover agent. They trained for this. They were prepared for it. They even may they're going to sniff it, or they may even taste the dope. They're so close, but you don't even recognize who they are, right? So at the end of the day, God allowed me to go through this. I've been through the book work helping and stuff. Now I'm going to put you in the situation, Teresa. And sometimes it's called situational training, which by training, do I train out throughout the country? I put people in the situation with my human trafficking awareness, whether I train on Zoom, I have the simulations that you're going to go through, or in person, put you in the situation, Teresa. And he put me in that situation and I followed him and I survived. Did I get, it's like I lost a lot of battle, I lost a lot of battles in that relationship, right? And going through the trafficking ordeal. But guess what? I won the war. I won that war. And when you think of human trafficking, you think about Teresa. My first name starts with the T, right? So the first thing you go through, you look at the trauma or the tragedy of being trafficked. The second T, the trial or the tragedy. Sorry, guys. The trial or the tragedy of being trafficked. The second T is the trauma, which is the effects of being trafficked, the psychological, the effects of trafficking ordeal. And the third, look at the triumph, overcoming the transformation with the whole trafficking ordeal. It doesn't cause me to have the fear anymore, right? I get up on purpose every day. Who can I help, Lord? Who do you have for me? Like where where you hear in Isaiah when he said, and then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, and whom shall I send for us? And he said, here I am, send me. So that's how I feel every day. God, I'm ready, send me, So with it, when you think of the transformation with regards to human trafficking, you remember that T, like I just stated, trial or tragedy, trauma, and then the triumph. Dealing where the ordeal of being trafficked no longer controls me. I have control of it. And that was my
Mm.
past. Meet me where I'm at right now. And here's where I'm at right now. I love God. That's my
Mhm.
friend. That's my friend. And just like, Reverend, if me and you get into an argument or whatever, we might not ever talk again. Right. But with God, he stays right with us. Jesus, I'm not going nowhere. Even when you turn your back and Teresa, you're mad at me. That's a relationship, a true relationship. I'm right here. I'm not going nowhere. Let's talk about
Mhm.
this. Let's work it out. And one thing is that he had me to do when he said, let every man examine himself. I had to examine Teresa.
Absolutely.
I
And
had to
and I
examine myself.
also I saw how you have reframed so much, like, your process of from moving from shame to the 3 T's that you described.
Uh-huh.
It is such a
Mhm.
journey that you went through. But I want you to speak to the woman right now who, whether it's human trafficking, whether it was, like, something else that
Mhm.
she has gone through, and it could be some gentlemen out here watching too, so even for the brothers, they've
Mhm.
gone through some things that devastated them, and they just don't see how they can move past it, like, move through it, however you wanna describe it, but at a place where they can make some purpose out of this. What would you say to them?
I would say that you had a purpose before the world had an opinion of you, right? And so what faith without work is dead. He will position you. He'll bring the right people in your life to help you. You got to have the will to want to do better, And then always remember Romans, what is it, 8:28 tells us that all things, not some things, all things work together for the good, right? For those who love the Lord, right, and are called according to his purpose. So not some things, all things. So God, what are we going to use this for? What are we using this for? What have I learned to take me to that next level, right? Because we're learning every day until we make it to that other side. And the biggest thing is never give up. There's somebody who's been through it and somebody that knows how to help you through it because God has equipped them with that gift. And remember, the gift is given without repentance. Somebody has that gift and he's going to connect you with them. You got to seek him. Seek him. And he's gonna direct your path. In directing your path, he told us that the steps of the righteous are ordered by him. So he gonna direct you to who you need to go to. And your blessing may not look right as you think it's gonna look. You have no idea how it may look. Think about this. People think that with human trafficking, it only affects children and youth. No, I'm an adult survivor of human trafficking, right? Then also we have elderly. I've worked in a situation where an elderly woman being trafficked at 62 years old. She was brought over here she's carrying an ID in 2 different states. This woman caught syphilis, right? and she went to a public health agency. Her trafficker brought her in to be treated for that syphilis, right? And with syphilis, you have to they give you the treatment, and you have to come back so many days or weeks later to go ahead, and they do a blood withdrawal to see if that medication worked. So imagine 62 years old, and then she had on her prior offenses in another state or prostitution. No, that's not a prostitute. She's not out there doing that willingly because she wants to. It's because she's forced to. This is her trafficker forcing her to do it, working out these massage parlors and stuff. So at the end of the day, people think that it just affects children and youth. No, I'm an adult survivor of human trafficking. When you think of human trafficking, it's just like COVID. It affects the children, it affects the youth, and it affects regular adults, right? And it's affecting people all over the world, communities and people all over the world. So at the end of the day, I thank God for saving me, because I'm in the life of saving others. We help one another. Each one teach one, reach one. That's what we do. So don't
Mhm.
give up is what I want to say to you. Because if you also Google my name, you'll also see that besides being a survivor of human trafficking, I was carjacked almost 2 years ago. God, why me? Why so much trauma, complex trauma? But then later on, I realized, why he used me, because somebody else might not have made it with that carjacking, because they might not have went ahead and dealt with knowing how to, look, you can have my car because that can be replaced. My life can't, right? Somebody else might, like I have an identical twin sister in real life. Her name is Tilly. You see, I'm Teresa. But she said,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have given him my car. I said, no, and you would have been dead.
Yeah.
They would have killed you. But
Yeah.
here I am, and also my background with training in law enforcement. I knew, here we
You
go.
knew how to de-escalate the
Yep,
situation.
de-escalate. Here you go. So he used even that to help me for later. So all things. Don't sit there and say, why
Absolutely.
me? Say, Lord, try me. Right? And be happy. Say, thank you, Lord, for using me, because he's going to use you with it. Thank you for choosing me to move forward with what you're about to have. You're going to use, because you're going to use what I thought was bad. It's going to be for my good, because all things are working together.
Mhm. Amen. Love that. I hate we're almost out of time, but my final question for you is, what does healing look like to you, Dr. Teresa?
Let me say, you can't put a timeline on healing, right? So I don't like when people say you should be healed by now. Oh, forget that or whatever. No. If I told you what you should be, you'd be mad. So that's my response to that. When people say that. Healing is every day until we leave this side of life. So we all have a story, and just so have in mind is human trafficking, right? But healing is every day. I still deal with the PTSD, but the PTSD doesn't have control of me. It may come, but it doesn't win in that brain, because I have the tools, you know? So at the end of the day, when we look at things, healing looks a lot different for me, because my trafficker was a white man. And so when we look at human trafficking is modern day slavery. So with my trafficker having been a white man, older white man with money, human trafficking is different for me, and being a pastor. So for me, healing for me is when I can still love white people, because I had to go back to that word, because we have the instructions right there. He said for us in Samuel, right? He said, don't examine the outward appearance, but it's that heart of that man, right? So I don't examine the outward appearance of people. So healing is when I can work with white people and be okay with it, because not all white people are bad, just like not all Black, Hispanic, whatever nationality you're from are bad. I had to examine the heart. Is there a heart of God? And then I had to go back to the basic where he says to be able to discernment, test the spirit by the spirit and know if it's of him or not. And so he's brought me a mighty long way, and I still have a way to go. And I thank God, because as I'm working with my peers, survivors of human trafficking, I know what healing looks like. So I try to show them, what does healing look like? Healing at the end of the day is allowing God to have his will in your life. That's healing. Getting out of your way and allowing God. So that's healing for
Mm.
me.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Teresa. So blessed by our conversation today. And the good news is the conversation is going to continue because you are a speaker at our upcoming ministry launch conference coming up on January 23rd, 24th. This is a virtual conference for women who desire to answer their call to ministry, whatever that focus may be. And what I consider you doing, Dr. Teresa, is ministry. is out
Mhm.
here in the streets, but it is ministry. It's saving lives. You're helping people to reclaim their faith, which might have been tested or lost because of what they've gone through, and you're just being a light in this world. And so I'm very excited for you being a guest at our upcoming event, and I just pray blessings for you as you continue to be, again, that warrior, that light in the world to make people aware that human trafficking does not discriminate. It can impact anyone. And
Mhm.
it's important for us to take a stand. And so let people know what's the best way for them to get in contact with you. We'll put that in the show notes, but where do you want people to follow you to get more information?
You can look on Facebook. Just type in Teresa, Teresa, no H in my name, but there's no problem if those two have an H in it, right? And then Meriwether, you can find me on Facebook. You'll see me in a picture. You know it's me with Mariska Haggerty. That was a meet with me. That she's on Law and Order Special Victims Unit,
Oh,
and it
that's
was
so
just a
cool.
beautiful person. So like, she's on my pitch. I have a picture with her
Oh,
there on my
fun.
she on my Facebook page, or the 502 area code 502-804-6273. You can directly text me and I'll, correspond with you, or whatever. You can call me. And then, yeah, so that you can get in touch with me. So I'm very approachable, very humble, and I'm trainable. There's some things that you might want to say to me or I don't know about. I welcome. So yeah. And then, yeah, I'm excited about the conference coming up, and I'm excited to meet people. And, again, who can I help today?
I love it. You help my listeners today. That's who you help today. So thank you again for being on the show. I'm so grateful to have you here with me today. So thank you for sharing your story, and we'll be hanging out again at our upcoming conference.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you all for tuning in to another episode where, we bring some dynamic people before you so that you can learn, you can be inspired, and you can get to a place in your journey where you stand on your story. And so I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, you know what to do. Slam that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, and if you haven't already, get your ticket for our upcoming ministry launch conference. It's a virtual event, so you can watch it again from the comfort of your home on January 23rd and 24th. So that's it for this episode. Thank you again, family, for hanging out with us today, and I'll see you next week.